A man walked into one of the most prestigious hotels in Paris, carrying no ownership papers, no government position, and no legal right to sell anything. Yet before he left the city, a businessman reportedly believed that this man could sell him the Eiffel Tower. The strange part is not that Victor Lustig told an impossible lie. The strange part is that he built a situation in which asking the obvious question, "Is any of this real?" began to feel unnecessary, impolite, or even dangerous. This is not a story about a criminal genius defeating foolish people. It is a story about authority, secrecy, ambition, and shame. It is about how the appearance of power can become a substitute for proof. In 1925, Paris was changing rapidly. The Eiffel Tower had been built for the 1889 Universal Exposition, and its future had once been uncertain. The original plan allowed for the structure to be dismantled after 20 years. It survived because it proved useful for scientific experiments, military communications, and radio transmission. By the 1920s, it was becoming a symbol of modern Paris, but the fact that it had once been considered temporary made the idea of dismantling it less absurd than it sounds today. Victor Lustig understood that a convincing deception rarely begins with a completely invented world. It begins with a real fact, then moves one step beyond what the evidence supports. Lustig was a European confidence man who used numerous identities. Government records from the 1930s described a long arrest history across Europe and the United States and recorded dozens of aliases. But in Paris, the identity that mattered was not Victor Lustig. It was the official role he appeared to occupy. According to later accounts, Lustig obtained stationery bearing a French government seal and presented himself as a senior official. He contacted leading figures in the scrap metal industry and invited them to a private meeting at the Hôtel de Crillon, an imposing hotel on the Place de la Concorde. The location did part of the work for him. A claim made on a street corner invites suspicion. The same claim made in a luxury hotel, delivered by a well-dressed man with official-looking documents, can feel like confidential government business. The room, the stationery, and the controlled manner of the speaker become silent witnesses. None of them prove anything. But together, they create an atmosphere in which verification feels less urgent. Lustig reportedly told the businessman that the Eiffel Tower had become too expensive or politically difficult to maintain, and that the government had decided to sell it for scrap. Because the decision would be controversial, he said, the matter had to remain secret until the contract was finalized. Secrecy was not merely decoration. It was the mechanism that protected the lie. A normal business opportunity becomes stronger when people compare information, consult lawyers, contact officials, and ask competitors what they know. A secret opportunity does the opposite. It isolates each person from the very people who could expose the deception. The target is made to believe that silence proves professionalism. If he asks too many questions, he may appear untrustworthy. If he contacts the government directly, he may violate the supposed confidentiality of the deal. If he tells competitors, he may lose his advantage. The victim begins enforcing the scam's rules against himself. That is the first psychological hook: authority. People rely on signs of authority because, in ordinary life, those signs are useful. Official letterheads, prestigious offices, formal invitations, confident language, and restricted information often do accompany legitimate institutions. Most people cannot independently verify every instruction they receive from a bank, a ministry, a hospital, or a court. Society functions partly because we use shortcuts to decide whom to trust. A scam does not need to destroy those shortcuts. It only needs to imitate them. The second hook was exclusivity. The businessmen were not supposedly being asked to buy a souvenir. They were being invited into a private government transaction involving one of the largest metal structures in Europe. The opportunity suggested status as well as profit. Being included meant that the recipient was important enough to know something the public did not. Exclusivity can change the emotional meaning of doubt. Skepticism no longer feels like intelligence. It can feel like hesitation. Another bidder may act first. a rare opportunity may disappear. The fear of being deceived competes with the fear of being left behind. Later accounts identify one of the participants as André Poisson, a businessman hoping to establish himself more firmly in the Paris scrap metal trade. Details about the private conversations vary between retellings, but the central point is consistent. Lustig appears to have recognized that commercial ambition could be turned into trust. The supposed official did not need every bidder to believe him. He needed one person whose needs matched the story. For an established industrialist, the proposal might have looked too strange. For someone seeking greater status, however, the same proposal could look like the transaction that would change how the entire industry viewed him. This is why calling victims greedy or gullible explains very little. Ambition is not a defect unique to victims of fraud. It is a normal human force. People build careers, accept risks, and pursue opportunities because they believe the future can be better than the present. The deception works when that healthy desire becomes attached to false evidence. Another element reportedly entered the conversation: corruption. Lustig is said to have implied that a personal payment would help secure the contract. Whether every detail of this exchange occurred exactly as later accounts describe is difficult to establish, but the role of the alleged bribe is psychologically important. A request for a bribe might appear to make the deal less credible. In fact, it may have made the impersonation feel more authentic. An official willing to accept money could seem corrupt, but real. The moral flaw became evidence of institutional access. It also created complicity. Once a target believes he has participated in an improper payment, reporting the fraud becomes more difficult. He may fear legal consequences, public embarrassment, or damage to his reputation. The deception no longer depends only on the con man's secrecy. It depends on the victim's silence. According to the most widely repeated version, Poisson paid, Lustig left France, and the victim did not immediately go to the authorities because he was ashamed. That shame is one of the most important parts of the story. Fraud is often described as a contest between intelligence and manipulation. But after the money is gone, another force can protect the offender: the victim's belief that being deceived reveals something humiliating about his character. He imagines the questions people will ask. How could you believe it? Why did you not check? Why did you keep it secret? Why did you pay? Those questions place the entire burden on the person who was manipulated, while ignoring the environment constructed to prevent clear judgment. Shame delays reporting. Delay gives the offender time to disappear, destroy evidence, or approach someone else. A social reaction intended to punish carelessness can therefore reward deception. Accounts of Lustig's life say he later attempted the Eiffel Tower scheme again. The exact sequence and outcome of the second attempt are less securely documented than the broad outline of the first, and some elements of Lustig's legend were amplified by later crime writing. What can be said responsibly is that the "sold twice" story became central to his reputation, while surviving records independently confirm that he was a prolific offender using many aliases. His career did not end in Paris. In the United States, he became involved in counterfeiting. The FBI's 1936 law enforcement bulletin reported that the self-styled Count Lustig was arrested by the United States Secret Service in May 1935, and that fingerprint exchanges revealed 14 arrests in foreign countries, more than 20 arrests in American cities, and 62 aliases. He escaped federal detention in New York that September and was recaptured soon afterward. He eventually received a 20-year federal sentence and was sent to Alcatraz. But turning Lustig into a glamorous outlaw would hide the real lesson. The Eiffel Tower story is memorable because the object was enormous. The methods were not. The same structure appears in smaller deceptions every day. First, the claim is attached to something partly true. Then it is delivered through symbols of authority. The target is offered privileged access. Secrecy prevents independent checking. Urgency narrows the time available to think. Finally, shame discourages the victim from speaking after the deception is discovered. no single element is enough. Together, they create a closed system in which doubt feels costly at every stage. The defense is not permanent suspicion of every official or opportunity. It is recognizing when trust is being made conditional on isolation. A legitimate authority should survive independent verification. A real transaction should not collapse because you contact the institution through a separate, publicly listed channel. Confidentiality may limit what can be shared, but it should not prevent legal review, documented ownership, or confirmation that the people involved actually hold the positions they claim. And when someone has already been deceived, the most useful response is not ridicule. It is rapid reporting, careful documentation, and the removal of shame from the conversation. Victor Lustig did not need anyone to believe that the Eiffel Tower could disappear overnight. He needed one person to believe that powerful institutions operate behind closed doors, that rare access must be protected, and that asking for outside confirmation could cost him the opportunity of a lifetime. The lie was the sale, but the product was belonging, a place inside a secret circle of authority, money, and influence. That is what made the impossible feel official. If this episode changed how you think about authority and exclusive opportunities, share it with someone who may find it useful. Subscribe to the Scam Files, where we do not simply ask what the deceiver said. We examine what the story allowed the listener to believe.